Hey everyone, I have some disturbing Reddit stories from Japan for you today that are super scary. Before you get comfortable, be sure to subscribe to the channel. The goal is 20 million subscribers, so please subscribe. And with that said, let's get straight into some disturbing Reddit stories from Japan. This happened more than 10 years ago, back when I was still in high school. At the time, I didn't hang out with the kind of kids who went to school every day. Instead, we'd stay up late and fool around every night. On this particular night, August 15th, the height of Obon, a few of us were talking on the phone, and somebody said, "It's Obon. Let's go to the cemetery at midnight for a test of courage." For those who don't know, Obon is a summer Buddhist festival, and it's believed that this is when spirits are closest to the living world, making for the perfect time for a test of courage. We all agreed to meet around 11 p.m. at the cemetery near town, but when I showed up at the meeting spot, it was just me and one friend, who we'll call A. The others bailed, saying they'd come later. We teased them on the phone, calling them cowards. A and I laughed, cracked open some drinks we'd brought along and decided to go anyway. Just the two of us, riding double on my bike. The cemetery was on the outskirts of town. To get there was only one road, lined with street lights, with nothing but empty fields on both sides. I still remember the sky that night. An endless stretch of dark red, almost black. It was burned into my memory. But when we reached the gates of the cemetery, the red sky suddenly shifted to pure black. The atmosphere changed in an instant. We joked nervously. Whoa, the vibe just got heavy. Leaving our bikes at the entrance, we switched on a small LED flashlight and started walking among the graves. The beam was weak. It couldn't even reach far enough to light up the trail ahead. In the daytime, the cemetery was quiet, but at night, it was unbelievably eerie. And even though not a single person was around, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching us. At first, A was hyped up, acting tough thanks to the alcohol, but eventually, he fell silent. The unease got to him. He was the first to say, "I think this might actually be dangerous. Let's get out of here." After about 30 minutes, we bolted back to our bikes and rode away. Around 1 a.m., we met up with the friends who had chickened out earlier. We gathered near a shrine, drinking and telling them about the cemetery. A, maybe still shaken, drank too much and started messing around with his phone, snapping random photos. I warned him, "What if you actually catch something for real?" But he ignored me and kept shooting pictures at random. Finally, he pointed his camera at a nearby phone booth and pressed the shutter. And there it was. In the right-hand window of the booth, a face appeared, darkened, grinning unnaturally. A real ghostly face captured in his photo. I was standing right beside him, watching his screen as he snapped it, so I saw it appear with my own eyes. A's voice trembled. I really caught something." Everyone froze. The fear hit us all at once, and we ran to the nearest convenience store. There, under the harsh fluorescent lights, we looked at the photo again. The face was still there, no mistake. The mood turned ice cold. Nobody wanted to talk about it anymore, and we split up soon after. Luckily, nothing happened afterwards. No hauntings, no strange misfortunes. The next day, A sent me the photo by email. I still have it, saved on my hard drive. I've never uploaded it anywhere. I think it's wrong to spread something like that online, when it was captured half as a joke. Even now, over 10 years later, when I look at that photo, I remember the fear of that night. No game or movie has ever compared. That was my true story, of a test of courage that went too far. My hobby is fishing. Sea, mountains, rivers, anywhere really. I enjoy it wherever I can, but heading offshore by boat is my favorite, because that's where you taste the real thrill. This is something I experienced quite a while ago. With a long holiday just ahead, I could hardly sit still. My friends and I had planned a trip entirely built around fishing, and had been counting down the days towards it. We'd be fishing whenever we were awake, then drinking, and using the ocean's bounty we caught as our snacks. Just imagining that kind of indulgence had my heart racing. Work finally ended, and the first day of the break arrived. The weather was perfect. The three of us, me and 2 friends, piled into the car and first headed to our lodging. We soaked in the hot spring, had dinner, and prepped for the next morning's early start. I had a strong feeling we'd catch plenty, and with that in mind, I went to bed. When I opened my eyes, it was still night, but the time said it was all ready to get up. Anglers rise early. We packed quick and left the inn before sunrise. We were going out with a captain I'd known for years, a seasoned local who knows the sea inside out. I trust his knowledge and experience completely, and after a quick reunion greeting, we set off for the open water. The sea at night carries a dreamlike air, a pitch-black darkness. Without the boat's light, you can't even see your own body clearly. If the moon is out, you can see a bit, but that only reminds you that you're a tiny speck in a vast stretch of nature, and that sight can be frightening. By the time we started fishing, the sky was growing pale, but we hauled in fish one after another. The captain's favorite spots never miss, but when we'd gotten a decent number of fish, I noticed a sound. Something was creaking, a noise that slipped in between the waves. At first, I thought it might be the boat, but if so, we'd have heard it before now. My friends turned their heads. "What's that?" Then, the captain suddenly said, "Sorry folks, looks like the tide's changed. We're calling it for today. My apologies." He turned the boat back towards the shore. It felt odd, but captain's word is law. We figured we still had tomorrow and decided to spend the day sightseeing. Even back on land, I couldn't stop thinking about that sound. The fish had been biting great, so why did the captain choose to go back? Usually he's the one urging us to stay out longer, and I decided that sound must hold some secret. The next day, we boarded again in the dead of night and headed offshore. While we were moving, I casually asked the captain, "What was that creaking sound? The one we heard yesterday?" He looked a little troubled. "Well, it's a sign telling us to head back," he said. I was about to ask for more details, but we arrived at the spot and started fishing. We weren't so lucky today. Not only was the sea quiet, but so were our rods, and time passed without a single bite. In that hush, the sound began again. I strained to locate it, but then I noticed something far off. It looked like a small wooden boat, with someone standing and sculling. Bit by bit, it seemed to be heading towards us. "Captain, there's a sculling boat." As soon as I said it, the captain barked, "Really? How many rows do you see?" I said 1. My friend said 2, and the other said he couldn't see anyone at all. The moment he heard our answers, the captain gunned the engine so hard we nearly fell. "Sorry to be rough, but we're heading back. Now." His tone was deadly serious, and the tension ran straight through us. What on earth was it? Over the engine, I could hear the creaking again. I looked astern, and the wooden boat was drawing closer. A hand-rowed boat catching up to a motorboat is impossible. What was that boat? I stared, and then I saw it. The one sculling was a mummy, a person reduced to skin and bone, in no way appearing alive yet still moving, rowing, coming straight for us. "Captain, it's getting closer." I cried out in fear, but he didn't respond, focused entirely on steering. "What is that?" Those of us who could see it stared, dumbfounded. Land came into view. The pursuing boat gradually fell back and disappeared. Once ashore, the captain said, "Tonight, you're not staying at the inn. You'll sleep at the shrine." He led us there, and when we arrived, he told the priest, "These guests have seen a kashiko." The priest said, "We'll keep them." And that was that. We were made to stay. Everyone at the shrine treated us kindly, and the captain, calling it a special service, prepared fish for us. Folks from our inn even came to help, and part of me foolishly felt like this was turning into an unexpected adventure. What is kachiko? After we finished eating and settled down, we asked for the truth behind it. Long ago, well after the war, fishing was the main livelihood in this coastal region. Families would head out to sea together to sustain their lives. With schools not widely available, Even young children were a precious source of labor. Over time, as catches needed to increase and hands grew short, people had to find labor from elsewhere. So, they turned to children. Those sold because of poverty, or those without kin or anywhere to go. Unbelievable as it sounds now, there was a time in Japan when children were treated as valuable labor and became victims of human trafficking, slavery, and forced to work. This wasn't limited to fishing. It applied to farming and other work too. There are no official records, but it is said such practices were widespread across the country. Originally, kachiko referred to a child of the household who took on the job of sculling the boat. The children brought in as labor also worked as kachiko, but treatment grew increasingly inhumane. Seen only as labor, the children worked from dawn till dusk. If they tried to run or resist, they were cruelly punished. Many died as a result, or so the stories go. There are no formal records of how many children became kachiko and perished. The truth is lost in darkness. As those times wore on, tales began to spread. People at sea seeing the ghosts of kachiko. The number of kachiko visible on the boats differed by witness. The more you saw, the higher your chance of dying soon. If you saw 4 or more, it meant you would die within a week. The number seen was said to be closely tied to a person's social standing. For example, a company president with many subordinates, a celebrity, a village head, or someone wealthy. If they saw a kachiko, they would die. One president reportedly saw more than he could count, and fell from a cliff a few days later. In recent years, with inhumane labor almost gone, and perhaps the spirits themselves finding peace over time, people who see kachiko have become rare. Fortunately or unfortunately, we were nothing but lowly employees. Seeing kachiko would not affect us, they said. Even so, as a precaution, we spent the night at the shrine. That night I woke needing the toilet. As I stepped into the corridor, its floorboards creaked, and that sound overlapped with the kachiko's creak in my mind, sending a chill through me. I wanted to finish quickly and dive back under the covers. While I was hurrying, I heard it. Near or far, I couldn't tell, but the sound reached my ears. I froze, held my breath and strained my senses. The sound went on, tapping out a steady, eerie rhythm. I racked my brain over what to do. Did I stay in the toilet all night? No. Better make a dash for it and ask the priest for help. Surely a kachiko wouldn't mistakenly take a nobody like me, right? Cold sweat beating, I decided I would leave the toilet and call for help. I moved as quickly as I could, easing the door open to check the hall. I looked right, then left, and there it was. A bluish, shriveled mummy the size of a child was standing in the corridor. Its eyes and mouth were gaping, oversized black holes grotesquely out of proportion. It was undeniably there, in front of me, yet the reality was so unbelievable, it almost felt artificial. I tried to scream, but I couldn't even twitch. I stood upright, locked in sleep paralysis. Neither of us moved, me or the kachiko, but as soon as I stared into its black eyes, they seemed to grow wider and wider, and I felt as if I were being drawn in. When I came to, I was lying under my futon. Beside me, the priest was performing a ritual. When he noticed I'd woken, he sighed with relief. I'm glad you've come back to yourself. These days, black company, or an exploitive workplace, has become a known concept, but the problems between those who use and those who are used have existed since long ago. Even though it's not as horrific as what the kachiko endured, similar suffering still exists in today's world. That thought alone tightens my chest. I still go sea fishing, but that captain has since passed away, and even now the very notion of kachiko is fading away. All I can hope is that the suffering that kachiko endured remains at least a lesson, that we build a society where their pain isn't forgotten, but used to make things better. This happened during my first year of junior high, over summer vacation. Normally, I'd spend a few days at my relative's place in the countryside with my parents and older sister, but that year my sister was in a traffic accident. so my mother stayed behind to care for her. Only my father and I went. After we arrived at my relative's house, I wandered off to walk around nearby until dinner. I was in my rebellious phase and didn't really feel like being around my dad or the other relatives. I'd been coming every year since grade school, so I knew the area pretty well. I certainly remembered how, whenever we visited the countryside, the adults would always say, kids must never go to Shrine A. Shrine A had been there since ancient times, but I'd never once been. When I asked my father long ago why we weren't allowed, all he said was, "It's a place you can't go until you're an adult." That only made me more curious. I wanted to go, but I was scared to go alone. While I was debating, Biko came up and asked, "What are you doing?" Biko lives near my relative's place and is close to my age, so whenever I visit, we always play together. When I told her about Shrine A, she said we should gather some neighborhood kids and do a test of courage. That night at 11 p.m., we slipped out while the adults were drinking and headed to meet Biko. There we found C-Boy and D-Boy. I'd met them a few times, and D-Boy's younger sister joined Eco. Everyone said they always wanted to go to Shrine A, at least once, so they joined in. Shrine A is about a 20-minute walk up towards the mountain. We were always stopped with, "You're still kids, so no," and no one would tell us the exact location. But if you lived there, you could guess the general area. So we decided to just take a quick look and come right back so the adults wouldn't catch us. And so we slipped off into the dark. On the way, I felt both excitement and a bit of fear. Still, with this many people, ghosts wouldn't show up. Besides, I figured the adults hid Shrine A because it's in the mountains and dangerous for kids to go alone. But when we reached what we thought was Shrine A and saw the shabby torii gate and desolate atmosphere, I regretted coming. There was an unmistakable sense of something not right. I thought we should go back, but Biko and C-Boy kept heading in, so we had no choice but to follow. Shrine A was tiny. If you passed under the torii, a small hokara, wayside shrine, stood 2 meters ahead. Biko said, "Huh? This is it?" sounding disappointed. C-Boy said this isn't scary at all, and the others wanted to go home. I was about to agree with D-Boy and Eco when C-Boy, before anyone could stop him, opened the hokara's door. He leaned in to look and suddenly let out a "Gya!", clapped a hand over his mouth and collapsed on the spot, then began rolling side to side. We had no idea what happened. C-Boy kept groaning and began scratching his throat with both hands, raking at it until he bled. The rest of us froze at the bizarre sight, but Eco shouted, "I'll go get Grandpa," and ran back the way we came. D-Boy said it was dangerous, so he ran with her. That left me and Biko to hold C-Boy's hands down so he wouldn't tear his throat out any further. C-Boy was 2 years younger than me and very slender, so I thought 2 girls could restrain him, but his strength was unnaturally strong, and he kept shaking us off. After who knows how many minutes, we heard several pairs of footsteps pounding towards us. That's when Iko's grandfather arrived. At a glance he shouted, "Norogami-sama." He told D-Boy, "Go to the village headman's house and fetch the old woman." Then he told the rest of us to go home, and that the old woman would handle it. I worried about C-Boy, but was more afraid of staying there, so we did as he said. When I got back to my relative's house, everyone already knew. My father scolded me harshly. "We told you not to go up there." I cried, regretting that my wanting to go had made C-Boy end up like that. A relative comforted me. We didn't explain it properly either. C-Boy was bitten by Norogami-sama, but the old woman will make it right. I asked what Norogami-sama was. Apparently in kanji it's written like throat-biting deity spirit. It all began too long ago, when a parent and child who were discriminated against finally ran out of food and starved to death. At the end, the child said, "I'll bite their throats. I'll make it so they can't eat anything. I'll make them suffer the same." The child died after saying that, whether those words became a curse or not. After that, children began scratching their throats, vomiting blood and dying one after another. A traveling exorcist purified the place and sealed the parent and child's remains in the hokara at Shrine A. Ever since then, people said children must not approach Shrine A. But once, like C-Boy, Someone opened the hokura and broke the seal. Then a child died, clawing at their own throat. Many adults have opened it, but for some reason they were all unharmed. It seemed only children were vulnerable to the curse, and so letting children near Shrine A became taboo. The old woman is said to be of the bloodline of the exorcist who first sealed Norogami-sama, and her duty is to quell it when trouble arises. It's a story that's hard to believe, but after seeing Seaboy like that, I couldn't help believing. My father and relatives told me the old woman would take care of it, but I couldn't sleep for worry, and morning came. There was a knock at the front door. Thinking it might be the old woman we'd heard about, I opened it, and there she was. She only said, "We made it in time for Seaboy, but that place is no good. As long as you're a child, never open it." Then she left. Seems my father contacted my mother and I was sent home that day. Seaboy was hospitalized for a while, but he recovered completely, and didn't even have a scar on his throat. Shrine A and its hokura are still there, but ever since that day, even after becoming an adult, I've never gone near it. It wasn't a dream, it was something that truly happened, and it's still burned into my mind. Back in university, a friend moved to a new apartment, so a few of us decided to drop in on him, partly to tease him and partly to check out his new place. The apartment was nothing special, about what you'd expect for a student's lodging. Not brand new, but not decrepit either. It was 3 stories tall. At the entrance, a narrow staircase led up, and beyond that a passage connected to the first floor rooms. Past the passage, there seemed to be a bicycle parking area. My friend's room was a corner room on the 2nd floor. That day it was drizzling. Carrying bags of booze and snacks we'd bought at the local supermarket, we crowded into the apartment. At the entrance staircase, we set down our bags for a moment while we folded our umbrellas. Suddenly, one of my friends let out a startled cry. "Whoa, what happened?" "I just got spooked." He looked totally embarrassed, but when we followed his gaze down the passage to the bicycle parking area, I saw it too. There, under the dim passage light, stood a woman. She looked to be in her 30s or 40s, with a long black hair dressed head to toe in black. Because her hair was so dark, with the darkness of the bike lot behind her, her pale face seemed to float in the gloom. She just stood there, unmoving, facing in our direction. But it wasn't like she was looking at us. It was more like she was staring vacantly into the distance. It was unnerving. We gave a small bow of apology and we passed and went upstairs to my friend's room. Inside, we immediately started talking about the woman. There was some creepy person downstairs. So scary, but what was she even doing there? Maybe she lives in the building. But if she was a tenant, why didn't she just go inside her room? While we were speculating, the friend who'd just moved in pouted. "Don't tell scary stories. I just got here." Soon enough, between drinking and gaming, we forgot about her. Hours passed and by late night we ran out of alcohol. 2 friends volunteered to go to the convenience store, but less than 5 minutes later they came back. "Let's all go together. That woman is still there. It's creepy." No way. We decided to check it out together, half like a test of courage. Sure enough, when we peeked down the same passage while heading downstairs, there she was. Exactly the same as before. Same posture, same place, same blank stare. By now, hours had gone by since we first arrived. Had she been standing there the entire time? Even if she was a living person, it wasn't normal. We discussed it on the way to the convenience store. Who was that woman? On the way back, I even suggested greeting her, emboldened by alcohol. But when we returned, she was gone. My friends were baffled, but I was relieved. Nothing happened the rest of the night, and we stayed over, then left the next morning. Sometime later, the friend who lived there said he was thinking of moving out. Already? Isn't that fast? That woman's there. According to him, on rainy days she always stood under the passage light. Once the rain stopped, she disappeared. It was unbearably creepy. He even tried greeting her. "Hello, I just moved into the 2nd floor. Sorry about the noise the other night." But she didn't respond. didn't even look at him, just kept staring upward, like at the ceiling. It wasn't a conversation. He contacted the management company, but nothing could be done. Whether morning or afternoon, as long as it was raining, she'd be there. She never did anything, just stood there silently, but it was frightening. He said, "She's not a ghost. I'm sure she's human, but isn't it scary? Just standing there, all day, whenever it rains. What is she?" In the end, my friend moved out after about half a year. The woman's identity was never discovered. For all I know, on rainy days, she might still be standing there, under that dim passage light. One day, while shopping alone, someone called out to me. Excuse me, could you give me a ride home?" When I turned around, there stood a young woman, and to my surprise, she was quite beautiful. "I lost my wallet and can't get home." When I asked for details, she said her name was Kana, and she lived alone. Didn't own a car, and her place was far enough away that walking would be difficult. She had tried calling her friends, but no one came, so in desperation she asked me. It was getting dark soon, and since she seemed so troubled, I decided that out of goodwill I'd give her a ride. We chatted casually as I drove. "Why did you ask me?" "You just seemed kind, and I thought you looked cool." Her words were full of suggestive undertones, and I couldn't help but get excited. But before we knew it, we arrived at her house. Then she said, I'd like to thank you. Would you come up to my room?" "A thank you? And me going into the apartment? Could this be a lucky turn of events?" My heart pounding, I happily agreed and followed her inside. She opened the door, and when I stepped in, the room was empty, showing no signs of anyone actually living there. "Huh? What's this room?" While I was frozen in shock, I heard the door clatter open, and 3 intimidating men walked in from the entrance. One of them barked orders at me, immediately demanding my wallet. I stammered in confusion, and another man behind him spoke up. "Which do you want? Hand over the wallet, or to go to the hospital?" Their eyes. It was clear they weren't normal. You know how bad people have a certain aura. This was something else. I realized instinctively that these were the kind of men who could kill without hesitation. There was no kindness and no shred of compassion in them. I caught a glimpse of a man behind them who kept stroking his chin, and when I looked closer, I saw he was missing his pinky finger. Terrified for my life, I handed over my wallet. "No cards in here?" one asked. My throat was tight with fear, and I could only shake my head. "What do we do with him?" When one of the men said that, Kana replied reluctantly, "That's enough." They pulled the bills out of my wallet, then tossed it to the floor with a thud, clicked their tongues in annoyance, and walked out the room. I remained in shock, and then suddenly my body started trembling all over. So this is what it feels like to be terrified, I thought. I felt like I was watching my own body from the outside. On my way back, I stopped at the police station to report what happened. Could it be, were these the people? The officer asked, showing me 4 photos. And yes, the same 4 men from earlier were in the pictures. When people twist goodwill into something evil, it's deeply damaging to the spirit. Thinking calmly, if someone loses their wallet, they should ask the police or a store clerk, not a random passerby. And as a woman, asking a strange man to take her home carries its own dangers. Inviting a stranger into your apartment, impossible. Looking back, I realized my own lack of self-awareness about crime prevention. In the end, losing just the cash was a stroke of luck. I tell myself that the money I lost was just tuition for a lesson well learned. This happened during summer break of my 3rd year in middle school. I attended an all-girls school and was part of the drama club, which held training camps inside the school together with classmates and underclassmen. It was our school's tradition to lay out tatami mats in 3 classrooms on the 4th floor and use them for sleeping. The length of the camp varied by club, but for us drama students, it was a full week. We started on the first day of summer vacation, so no other clubs were there yet. Our advisor told us that the other clubs wouldn't be starting until later that year, so we were thrilled to have the whole week to ourselves. No sharing the kitchen or fridge, it felt lucky. The classrooms we stayed in were right next to the bathrooms at the top of the stairs. Some people might dislike being next to toilets, but it was actually really convenient at night. We thought the camp would be smooth and comfortable, and for the first 4 days it was. Drama club is surprisingly physical, so we spent our days running long distances, doing sit-ups, back exercises, stretches, and by night we were so exhausted we could barely eat, and we slept like the dead until morning. After 3 days we got used to it, and by the fourth night, us seniors even had energy left for chatting before bed. That night, one of my friends said she was going to the bathroom, so I went with her. The bathroom was just next door, with a sink area in front and 5 stalls lined up on each side in the back. We went into neighboring stalls. I have a habit of flushing the water while I go, and as I did, my friend in the next stall suddenly spoke. Huh? What did you say? I couldn't hear over the water, but she kept talking. What? I can't hear you. No matter how I asked, she just kept talking as if she didn't notice. I figured I'd ask her later, but when I washed my hands and she finally came out, I joked, "Why were you talking to yourself in there?" She looked annoyed. You were the one talking. I couldn't understand a word you were saying. And that's when I realized only the 2 of us had gone to the bathroom, yet we could still hear voices from one of the stalls. We couldn't make out what was being said, but it sounded like several girls chatting and laughing happily. My friend and I looked at each other in silence, unable to move. Suddenly, there was a huge crash, like a desk falling over. Then came the sound of multiple footsteps pounding up the stairs. Terrified, we ran back to the classroom where everyone else was sleeping. Everyone was accounted for. It wasn't a prank. Just as I was about to explain what happened, more footsteps ran down the hall outside. Everyone seemed to understand and silently went back to bed. I realized then that when you feel a real fear, you can't even speak. The next morning we discussed it, unsure if it was just our imagination or something supernatural. Our teacher brushed it off, saying you must have been half asleep. But the footsteps continued every night until the end of camp, always at exactly 10:48 p.m. The sound of several people racing up the stairs, then dashing past our classroom. To this day, no one knows what those footsteps were. The only thing that remains is an unspoken rule. When camping at school, everyone goes to bed early.